Crowley began issuing propaganda on behalf of the Germans for German-owned American newspapers. Crowley's defense being that he was deliberately writing such absurd nonsense that it made the German cause look ridiculous to the American people. The best example of this is probably an open letter that Crowley published addressed to Zeppelin.
A giant Zeppelin leaves its base for a night raid. See how defenseless this city will lie beneath the gaze of a hawk.
The Germans have decided to make the damage as widespread as possible. A great deal of damage was done in Croydon, where my aunt lives. Unfortunately, her house was not hit. Count Zeppelin is respectfully requested to try again. The exact address is Eaton Lodge, Outram Road.
Denounced by the British press as a traitor, Crowley decided that it was time to fulfill his role as a prophet of the religion that he now called Thelema. Crowley needed a place to practice Thelema, and set off across Europe to find somewhere away from the prying eyes of Edwardian England. He eventually stumbled across a ramshackle farmhouse in Cefalù, northern Sicily. Unprepossessing as it was, this was to be Crowley's temple.
What the Book of the Law proposed, the Abbey of Thelema practiced. Crowley must have had in his mind the hope that this was the beginning of his new religion.
Crowley set up the Abbey in 1920 with his latest mistress, Leah Herzig, their newborn baby, and a motley band of followers from around the world. Crowley met Leah in New York when she was only 19. She was totally dedicated to him and was prepared to do anything he asked of her.
I dedicate myself wholly to the great work. I will work for wickedness. I will kill my heart. I will be shameless before all men. I will freely prostitute my body to all creatures.
It's amazing to think that, you know, in the 1920s, 80 years ago, Crowley came here with his disciples to sort of found his spiritual college and really just to live a completely different way of life, his own unique way of life. They were going to break through all the constraints that were sort of tying them up in England. Amazing to think that this was here. He had his children here and several disciples and several of his mistresses, and they all lived under the one roof. The whole point of living here was to completely clear yourself and discover your true will, and Crowley was the man who could help you do that.
The disciples performed sex magic rituals under the influence of hashish, opium and cocaine. They even had a dog called Satan.
As far as Crowley was concerned, it was an experiment in a different kind of living. There were piles of drugs on the table. The children ran around naked and were allowed to sort of come into the room while adults were having sex. Crowley believed that if you gave man absolute freedom to do exactly what he wanted, this could do nothing but good.
It was evidently not the most pleasant place to stay. The members were prone to disease, discomforts of various kinds, most of which could only be alleviated by faith in Crowley himself and the ready supply of drugs, which Crowley made sure were readily available. Amongst all of this, you have to imagine that there was also a family atmosphere, albeit a very dysfunctional one. Think Charles Manson rather than the Waltons, I think. When Crowley first arrived here with his followers and set up base camp, it absolutely rocked the Cefalù's kind of the whole village, because they'd never seen someone behave in this way before. They'd never even seen it. He was kind of like a free man. And locally now, this actual house of Aleister Crowley is supposed to be cursed, and I was advised when I first came here not to go up to the house, that it would be, you know, a very, very bad thing to do. So people are genuinely sort of frightened of the actual building.
Aaron Paramore first came to Sicily on a kind of occult pilgrimage and was amazed at what he found inside the now derelict abbey.
It's going to take a walk through. stabby or demonic smile to my brain. Soak me in cognac and cocaine. There's somebody with a very long tongue who seems to say, "Fuck Leah."
This is the place that Crowley called the Nightmare Room. Disciples were given drugs and made to sit and look at Crowley's pornographic paintings on the walls. The idea was that by doing this they would lose all their fear and repression.
There's a grinning demon. It's a rather well-endowed demon.
As people at the Abbey continued to lose their inhibitions, the sex magic rituals Crowley asked them to perform became more and more extreme.
Probably the most controversial and lurid episode in the whole Cefalù period is the attempted copulation between one of his scarlet women, Leah Herzig, and a goat. Now, supposedly, at the time of orgasm, the goat was to mount Leah Herzig, and at the time of orgasm, it was to have its throat cut. You can wonder whether what he was trying to do was, A, to test the dedication of his disciples, to see how far he could push them. Perhaps he also thought it would be a good show. I mean, Crowley was dedicated to novelty, and I dare say that would be a novelty to most people.
The goat, the symbol, of course, of Satan. Normal man and woman is repulsed by this sort of thing, and we wonder what actually can bring human beings to this. And I think what had happened was that in the Abbey they had sated or satisfied so many of their appetites that all the time they were going just that bit further until eventually they were copulating with animals. And I suppose when you get to that stage, it is symbolic of the depth of evil.
Things started to go wrong at the Abbey. Crowley struggled with his growing drug addiction. Leah had a nervous breakdown, but what Crowley called the great work had to go on.
People who use the word I are encouraged to cut themselves in order to remind themselves that they don't have an identity. Crowley was there destroying people's egos. That was part of the experiment. He was liberating them from their conventional upbringings.
Raoul Loveday was an Oxford graduate who broke away from his middle-class background and came to Sicily with his wife. He wrote to his parents that he was happier at the Abbey than he had ever been. But Loveday fell ill and died after allegedly drinking the blood of a cat sacrificed in a ritual. His wife left Sicily and went straight to the British press.
Crowley's little squalid piece of heaven collapsed due to one of the earliest tabloid attacks, which, rather than attacking Crowley's Abbey as being the kind of mind control camp it was, which probably wouldn't have made sense to people at this time,